When people are looking for something different and you're not sure what to visit next, a lot of people don't think about what's in our own backyard. They don't even realize that you can do a Great Lakes cruise. And so that is a great alternative. I mean, they are massive and huge, and they're really a very unique destination. I think when you're looking at a little bit more domestic travel, having the lakes as an option is such a more viable alternative than just a U.S. river. There's just so much more to see.
Welcome back to Passport Diaries, a travel podcast by Travel Store that goes to unique and off the beaten path places all around the world. On today's episode, we are going to take a cruise, but it is probably not the kind of cruise that just popped into your head. Usually when you think cruise, you think of a big ship on the ocean, or maybe even a smaller ship that's going on a river in Europe. But have you ever thought about cruising on the Great Lakes? For today's episode, we invited our friend from Victory Cruise Lines to tell us all about what it's like to sail on the Great Lakes. And they are the only ones that actually sail to all 5 Great Lakes. So we're going to stop in places like Toronto and Chicago, Milwaukee, Escanaba, and we're going to do some experiences like learn how to make fudge with the famous chocolatiers on Mackinac Island, take a horse-drawn carriage up to the Grand Hotel. We're going to see some architecture by Frank Lloyd Wright, visit the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and go to a maple farm to learn how to make taffy, and then we're going to stop at the pièce de résistance, which is Niagara Falls. Before we hop into the episode, please take a second to subscribe to our YouTube channel or to our podcast, wherever you like to listen, so that you never miss another episode. And now, without further ado, let's go ahead and set sail to the Great Lakes with Victory Cruise Lines.
Victory Cruise Lines is we're in a rebirth year, let's say.
Yeah.
This is technically our inaugural sailing season, but we've been around for quite a long time. So our owner is a man named John Wagner, and he originally started a company called American Queen Steamboat Company, and they did paddle wheel cruises on the U.S. rivers. And we had 4 different paddle wheelers at the time, and we're sailing just on the U.S. rivers. And he decided he wanted to expand beyond the lake or rivers and get into sailing on the Great Lakes. And so there was a very young cruise line in its infancy called Victory Cruise Lines, and he acquired that cruise line and brought it into the fold. So we operated American Queen Steamboat Company on the U.S. rivers and then Victory Cruise Lines on the Great Lakes. And we did that for a few years. And then in 2021, he decided to retire, and he sold the business, and the business rebranded and was then named American Queen Voyages. So Victory kind of came into that fold. And then regrettably, a few years later, they went bankrupt, but the ships were sitting in bankruptcy, and John was sitting at home bored in retirement. And he thought, I'm going to go back and buy those ships again, and let's restart sailing on the Great Lakes as the original Victory Cruise Lines. And that's the kind of person John is. He is on the water all the time, and it is in his blood. So for him to just not be on the water is kind of unusual. And so for him to call us back up and say, look, I want to put back the original team that made American Queen Steamboat Company so successful, and then bring it back to life now. And we were all so excited to do that. I think when we first started up, there was about 25 employees, and I think 24 of the 25 were all from the original team. So that really speaks to the ownership and the passion for the project as well.
You said he was always on the water, and it's odd for him not to be on the water. And it's also his passion project. So was he how did he want to start a cruise line in the first place?
Well, John had been kind of a mariner for years and had been kind of on the operational side with, ferries and other maritime services. At one point, we were part of a group that had military and government contracts for marine services. So it just kind of turned into this aspect of where he wanted to get into the overnight cruise business. So he let, one partner do the normal day-to-day ops, and he took over overnight cruise. And that's where kind of the original company came out to play. But like I said, he just has such a passion for sailing that I think when you've done it for your whole life and you're then in retirement, it's like, I gotta do something. I want to get back on the waters. And that's kind of where that passion came back from.
So something that I really liked to learn about Victory Cruise Lines is you are the only cruise line in the area that sails to all 5 Great Lakes. And
that is correct. We are actually the resident cruise line in the Great Lakes. So when you think about the destination of all 5 Great Lakes, it's a very short window of time to sail there. So we really sail only April through October. And right now, that's all we do is all 5 Great Lakes is kind of our signature itinerary. We have a few other voyages that hit the Canadian Maritimes and so forth when we go to and from dry dock, but we really focus on the lakes. And it's such a unique destination. I mean, it's like 21% of the fresh water in the world. So most people don't realize that they're so vast. You can't even see across to the other side. And it has its own tides in the lakes itself. So it's really a unique place to go visit. And it's right here in our own backyard. So
one of my most shameful geographical stories is my friend came back from Chicago, a trip, and he showed me some photos, and there was like this beautiful coastline. And I was like, I haven't been past Colorado yet. He was like, I told him, oh, I didn't realize Chicago was, on the Atlantic or there's the ocean. He was like, that's the Great Lake. And it just kind of really brought home how vast they are. And then reading the statistics about, yes, 1/5 of the world's surface fresh water and just massive bodies of water that are incredible ecosystems, huge on tourism, and the economies of that region is stunning. And the history and it's just...
The history is a big part of, what we do also. And we can talk about it as we go through. But, we have something called a Lake Lorian, which is really our resident historian on the lake. And they do all the lectures and presentations. But we work in tandem with the National Museum of the Great Lakes to ensure that our presentations are accurate and really getting guests immersed into the destination. So, if we're up in Lake Superior and we're talking about, fur trading and all of that stuff back in the old history, or even the iron ore industry where it's mined and brought down into places like Indiana and Pittsburgh to make steel. So there's so much history that's here, whether it's, industrial or just kind of the birth of Americana. So it's really a unique place to visit.
Very much so. We always talk about going abroad to Europe or down south to like Chile or something like that. And, we have 50 states that are all incredibly different. And then just the pockets themselves, the Great Lakes being one.
Yeah.
Is it my first thought when I say like, oh, I'm going to go travel? It should be.
And a lot of people don't realize it too, because most people, when they think of travel, they think of this big blue water flight they've got to go over, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you think about Great Lakes, you're kind of getting that flair for going international. I mean, we do travel to Canada, but you're closer to home. So your flights are much shorter. It's way more convenient. And for people who don't want to fly, they could even do it kind of as a drive destination. So they could drive to Chicago and do our round trip Chicago itinerary, or maybe drive to Chicago. When they get off in Toronto, they can take Via Rail back through Canada and then come down into the States. So there's different ways of doing it if they wanted to get out of doing the flights, but really having the more convenient domestic flights is a big part of that one-way cruise. So yeah.
Like I grew up in Central California. And so any lake trips that I know were Lake Tahoe, beautiful, pristine, gorgeous. And when I was looking at, Lake Superior, Michigan, Erie, the waters are stunning. The islands are amazing. And there's these national forests just spreading out, kayaking, sailing. It's monumental. And so it's so similar, but they're both so distinct and different that kind of need to see both.
Yeah, they really are very special. In fact, if you ever watch some of the shows on like HGTV and they're talking about buying an island, a lot of times those ones are also within the Lake Superior area. So there's some really beautiful places along the Great Lakes throughout the entire, 5 lakes and so forth. And even as you get up to the St. Lawrence Seaway and make your way out to the Canadian Maritimes, that's all gorgeous as well. It's just something very special, but again, kind of seasonal. So like I said, April through October is really the season to go. That's when you can go. Otherwise you start getting into some pretty cold weather and so forth. But it's just a beautiful destination to visit.
Now, I would love to get a sense of, you said kind of the flagship itinerary is the 5 Great Lakes. And it's this fun, the one that I was looking at is what I would most likely do, which is start in Chicago and then go up and around.
Sure.
So can you just Start taking me
Of
on those
course,
stops and
walk
tell
you
me what
through
I'm going
it.
to see.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Yes.
Let's put ourselves on board and just picture the wind in our hair, right? We really are kind of an all-inclusive cruise. So before you even
Oh,
set foot on board the ship, we always provide a pre-cruise hotel night. So that way you can get into the destination and enjoy the city before you sail away. So if
yeah.
we're starting in Chicago, like where you'd like to go from, you'll get into Chicago, you'll check into the hotel, you've got the night on your own. The next day, you can do your own thing, or you can opt in for our pre-cruise premium tour, which actually takes you right to the ship for embarkation. And we are the
Ooh.
only cruise line that is allowed to dock at Navy Pier. So we have a really iconic location. I mean, downtown Chicago, Navy Pier, it really is, so iconic to leave the city from right there, and being the only cruise line that can dock there is really special for us. So that's kind of our first step off point. And our ships, they are only 190 guests on board. So we
Oh.
really have this very intimate feel. And it's 100% outside staterooms. So no inside cabins at all. Everyone has two large picture windows. There's a couple of open veranda categories, and the owner's suite with semi-private balconies. But for the most part, you're really in your room to kind of just sleep, right? And go, this cruise is about the destination. It's not about the ship. It is truly
Yeah.
about where you're going and what you're seeing and experiencing along the way. And one of the best things is that we include shore excursions in every port of call. So,
Mm.
that's part of that trip. So if you want me to walk through the itinerary, I'm happy to do that and kind of give you an idea of what's included and so forth.
Yes, please. So we're starting in
Okay.
Chicago.
There's like an architectural boat tour that goes along the river. There's
Ooh.
another one that does kind of a walk in Frank Lloyd Wright's footsteps to see some of the buildings that he's created around town. So that's just kind of a little bit before you get on the ship. Once you start sailing, we do in 2025, we're going to hit the port of Escanaba, which will allow us to kind of get into the Upper Peninsula area a little bit. We'll spend some time with, the State University to look at kind of how the forestry division works up in this area where it becomes so beautiful with
Ooh.
the scenery here. But Escanaba is only going to be in 2025. In 2026, we'll replace that with Milwaukee. So if you've
Oh.
got people who are like Harley Davidson fans, we've got the Harley Davidson headquarters you could go to. So lots of stuff there. But really, to me, the piece de resistance almost is our stop in Mackinac Island. And
Oh my
that
God.
is incredible. I mean, when you talk about really special destinations, we're talking about a island that has no vehicles on the island. It is all horse-drawn carriages, bicycles, and people walking around by foot. And there's just kind of one main part of town that's along the waterfront. In fact, we are also the only cruise line allowed to dock because of our size. We can dock right at her pier. And so it's
Oh.
a very easy 5-minute walk into that little main strip of town, which not only is there great shopping, but there's lots of fudge there. So Mackinac Island is known for its fudge. There's like 15 different fudge shops along the waterfront, but we
Mm.
include the horse-drawn carriage ride that actually goes through the national park, and we visit the Arch Rock. We hit Fort Mackinac,
Oh.
where there's some military history. And then we end at the Grand Hotel, which is quite notable for being in some movies, and a lot of presidents and dignitaries have stayed there before. So we give everyone a self-guided voucher to kind of explore the Grand on their own. They can add on the famous lunch that takes place at the Grand Hotel, or where you're going to find me, I'm going to get hands-on with the master chocolatier and make some Mackinac Island fudge. And so
Oh
that's a
my
great
God.
experience. Yeah. So
Uh,
so Mackinac Island is one of my favorite stops. It's just so beautiful. And we've even had guests who like to opt in to just get the bikes and go right around the island itself. They can
mm.
certainly do that if they're a little more adventurous. If they just want to walk along the waterfront, they can do that too. It's just kind of one of those just relaxing destinations to go visit. We then begin to transit up into Lake Superior. So when we sail through Sault Ste. Marie, we
Mhm.
actually enter the Sioux Locks. And when we get into that lock, there's one level we go up and to get into Lake Superior. And then we do a few hours of scenic sailing around the shoreline of Lake Superior. So that's how we're able to hit all 5 Great Lakes, is that lock within the Sioux Locks area. So then we'll come back out and we'll visit Sault Ste. Marie, which is a quaint town that's charming. Got some, great little shops and kitschy shops right along the port area. But there's some really unique sights to see here too. There is a tower. You can ascend all the way to the top of the tower for great views around the city. But really also, to me, the things that I recommend to people when they're doing Sault Ste. Marie, and I don't know about you, Jackie, I don't know if you're a rock hound. Do you like rocks at all, or geology? You collect rocks? I mean, okay.
Oh yeah.
I'm kind of a rock hound myself. And so when I go on trips, if I find rocks, like I'll bring them home if I can. And we visit a place called Point Iroquois Lighthouse. And then that's on kind of a bluff overlooking Lake Superior. And then after we tour the lighthouse and so forth, we actually go meet with a geologist and a guide who will take us down to the shore of Lake Superior and really kind of identify the different rocks that are in the area and why the geology is so unique here. And then they encourage you to take some rocks home with you, which, I'm not going to say no to that. And then there's a picnic included, and you've got this beautiful overlook that we visit later on at Spectacle Lake. So it's just kind of a more earthy type of, experience. Whereas the other immersive experience we offer, it's called Echoes of the Bowatting. And what we do is we take our guests into Ontario and we visit with an Anishinaabe tribe. And so this First Nations tribe welcomes us in, and then they do a drumming presentation. They'll do like a smudging ceremony example, and they'll bring out some cuisine that they eat that's very local to their culture. And so we really get immersed into something truly different. That's just a little bit more soul searching, I like to say, versus rock searching. You got soul searching now. So again, something really different. You want to make sure guests are fully immersed into the destination and have the option to do not only the included experiences that we have, but provide them with a way to kind of gear their tours and trips to what interests them, of course, right? We want to make sure that they have options and that they can really make the most of this journey, because it's a little bit of a longer journey. It's a 9-night cruise, so you've got a little bit more time to play with here, but that's just the beginning. We haven't even hit Lake Huron yet and made our way to the big cities. So I'll take you. We'll start to do our scenic sailing. So we actually have a day of scenic sailing on Lake Huron. So as we begin our journey down towards Detroit, we're going to have beautiful scenery, and guests can on board enjoy the lectures and presentations or play games or whatever it is they want to do. But the next morning we will arrive in Detroit, and we literally dock in the heart of the city in this totally kind of revitalized waterfront area, and we pull right up, and guests can come off and they can do our included tour to the Henry Ford Museum of American Innovation, which I have to tell you, I'm not normally a huge museum lover, but this is incredible. And I especially didn't want to go to the Henry Ford Museum because I thought it was going to be cars. And my husband watches car shows every night, right? So I don't need to see more cars. But it is so much more than that. And cars and rail, but it is truly about American history and innovation. So, when I was there, I got to sit in the bus that Rosa Parks sat in. And there's also the chair that Abe Lincoln was shot in was there. At least for the exhibit was there when I was there last time. It's about women's suffrage and civil rights. And there's so much history here. And so that's what we do. We include that tour to the American Innovation Museum. We also have a premium tour that they can upgrade to that goes next door to Greenfield Village, which is like a reenacted kind of 1800s feel of Henry Ford's era. So period themed costumes are worn. We also go to the Rogue Factory tour. So there's a couple of different things there, but then also Frank Lloyd Wright. He's got a lot of buildings here in the area. So we've actually partnered with Cranbrook University to have a very unique kind of behind the scenes look at the buildings that's led by someone from the university itself. So again, really getting into something different. So not just cars, but buildings and historical sites as well. So yeah, that's kind of a brief look into Detroit.
I have heard that Detroit and the downtown area is really exciting. Like the culture, the food, the art scene, the history.
Yes.
It's just rich and you don't have enough
Right.
time, but that's the
Yeah.
point. You can come back.
I always recommend that people do that. So again, that's just a little sampling into Motor City. And
Yeah.
then from Detroit, we continue on our journey. We get into Lake Erie and we then stop in Cleveland. And what's really great about where we actually dock in Cleveland is it's right in front of the Browns football stadium. And about a 10 to 15 minute walk to the side is this huge white wonky shaped building. That's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And that is literally where we dock. So our included excursion is to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We will drive people over there and they can spend a few hours exploring, which personally, if you're a rock and roll fan, a few hours is not enough. You could spend the whole day there. But there is, again, so much more in Cleveland besides music, right? We actually have a tour that visits multiple locations. We start with the Botanical Garden. We hit the Crawford Auto Aviation Museum, I'm trying to think what the other is, the Museum of Art, and then we hit Lakeview Cemetery, where President Garfield's memorial is located. Now, I have a question for you, Jackie. So did you know that there is a First Ladies National Library?
I did not, and now I'm upset that I didn't know this. Really?
Yeah, so there in Cleveland, that's actually one of our step-off points for one of our immersive experiences, which is a presidential journey. And usually when we think of our presidential journeys and types of tours, it's all something that's based around the presidents. But we actually have a First Ladies National Historic Library and Museum. And so we start off this tour by going there first. And then afterwards, we visit the McKinley Library and Monument, and then Garfield's boyhood home in National Historic Park, before then ending at Lakeview Cemetery, where his memorial is. So again, something kind of in the life of several different presidential aspects. So that's Cleveland. I mean, there is so much to see there. And then I know that I said Mackinac Island in the beginning was kind of our piece de resistance, but I may have not given the full truth. I think it's kind of bookended piece de resistance, because after Cleveland, we go to Port Colborne, and Port Colborne is our gateway to Niagara Falls. And we actually visit on the Canadian side. So Horseshoe Falls, the biggest, most impressive viewing. And we take guests in that boat right up close to the falls and give them a poncho to try and stay dry. But they get that up close feeling with Niagara Falls itself. So truly unique.
And aren't there a couple of, I think you said something about going behind the falls? So
there's actually an elevator that goes down into, I don't know, the ground, let's say the mountain, kind of goes down into the sub area towards where the falls land, but you're off to the side. I don't know how to describe that properly, but so you go down this elevator, you end up on a platform where you're actually standing at the base of the falls and you can look at it, and then you can kind of walk around a corner and you'll be behind the falls, and there's like these little tunnels that have viewing areas at the end, and the water is just coming right over that entrance. Now you can't get right up close to the water, right? There's a barrier that you have to stay behind for safety reasons, but you can actually see the backside of the fall. It's like the backside of water.
Kind of looks like the front, but not.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just a really kind of surreal experience. I mean, you almost kind of fantasize about those old days when they say somebody would get in a barrel and go down the falls, and what are you going to see, right? So obviously nothing like that nowadays, but it just has this sense of nostalgia. And it's really just an incredible experience to go to. I remember honestly taking my mom there for the first time, and she was just like jaw dropped. This is so incredible to see. And when you compare it to Bridal Veil Falls across the way on the New York side, it's not anything in comparison. I really think the Canadian side, where we take our guests to, is so much more impressive. Bridal Veil Falls is still beautiful, but it's not this Horseshoe Falls where you are completely surrounded by it almost. So it's really incredible.
Yeah.
And that's just one thing we do there. We will take you to a helicopter that will then go over Niagara Falls. So you get this really unique perspective. And then we land in a vineyard where we have a wine-paired lunch with multiple tastings. So if you really want something out of this world that includes wine and a helicopter, you can certainly get that out of Port Colborne with us.
That is an unreal combination. So you're cruising to Niagara Falls and then you take a helicopter over the falls. Like getting above these incredible destinations is always worth it. For me, at
Oh
least.
yeah.
It's just you when else do you get that perspective, that view, and then you can come back down and see it from, as a tiny little human beneath this massive,
Right.
roaring, powerful like feat of nature. It's just uh unreal.
It's very unique. It's very, anytime you can get up in a helicopter, if you can stomach it, then not that
Yeah.
it's bad, right? But some people are just not good with heights or helicopters. But it's really quite a very special thing that we do. And
Yeah.
something totally different. Maybe you're not a helicopter fan, whoever's listening. Maybe you've done Niagara Falls and you just want to try something different. We do have something very different that's kind of for your sweet tooth. So, first of all, we will take guests to a place called White Meadows Maple Syrup Farm, and they
Oh.
can walk amongst the maple trees and see them tapped to get the sap out of it. And then they'll take that sap and put it in ice or snow and do kind of this hands-on taffy making with it. So it's really kind of unique. And then we'll have like a tasting and of course maple iced tea and all that good stuff. But
Oh, of
so again,
course.
something a little bit different than the falls, right? So we
Yeah.
always like to offer kind of a diverse range of activities for guests to do. And then after you do all that fun stuff, you come back to the ship. You relax, you have wonderful cuisine because, all our food and all our beverages are included. In fact, at dinner time, you don't have to worry about assigned tables or assigned times because it's open style, restaurant style seating. So you just, doors open at 6:30. You can come in and request a table for 2 or a table for 8. Depends if you want to talk to people that night or not. But yeah, so it's a very easy process for the main dining room. And then we have an alternative dining restaurant called The Grill. For dinner time, it turns into a reservations required restaurant called the Tuscan Stone Grill. So since you're kind of a wine and food concierge, you might like this option. So when you go to the Tuscan Stone Grill, first of all, it's included. There's no extra surcharge for that restaurant or for even things like lobster on the menu. So you
Oh.
go in and you pick this hot stone plate. And then you'll select your protein, your chicken, your beef, your fish, whatever it is. And then you'll cook it on the hot stone plate with kind of our culinary team there and assistants. And you have this really cool kind of culinary experience while you're on board. And again, it's included in our fare. So for the last night, so if we're doing Chicago to Toronto, which again, we go in both directions. But so we leave Port Colborne and then we need to get into Lake Ontario. And in order to do that, we have to transit the Welland Canal. And so whereas the Sioux locks had 1 lock to go through, the Welland Canal has 8 different locks. And so
Wow.
we could be a few hours, it could be all night, depending on the cargo traffic in the locks. But we've got to go through those 8 locks in the canal to get up into Lake Ontario before we end our cruise and disembark in Toronto.
What are the excursions or the experiences, or what do you love about that city in particular?
I really like the towers, and I think it's called Towers and something. I can't remember the name, but there is a Towers premium tour that visits the CN Tower, which is once
Oh.
one of the tallest structures ever. And so you can go out to the glass floor and kind of look down, which is very unique. Yeah, something a little different, makes your heart pump there. But then it also visits Casa Loma, which is a gorgeous historical mansion from yesteryear. It's just absolutely beautiful to see. And so I would say if people have time before they fly home, I'd recommend that Towers premium experience because they get kind of the modern with the CN Tower and then the old Casa Loma mansion. So it's really very special to see. So that would kind of be my recommendation.
I just kind of want to call it out that the talks that are given, and there's like the Lake Lorien, but everybody who is a guide that takes you through, like on the bikes on Mackinac Island, there's always a guide taking you. And who are these people? Are they who are these people?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So when we have a official tour that people are going on, like a premium or immersive experience, there's always a guide that we have worked with in the destination who's the local expert. So we bring on that local expert to do the narration throughout that tour. When we're in a destination where it's kind of an included excursion, like the Henry Ford Museum of Innovation, they can kind of walk through on their own. There will be a guide from the museum who will kind of walk them through, but if they wanted to go out on their own, they could certainly do that too. But yeah,
I absolutely love wandering places on my own, certainly. But to really, if you're there one day and you really want to know what's going on, what are the hidden gems, what's the history and the fun facts, and just, it's always better to have a guide. So I love to hear that there's always somebody if you want the option.
yes, absolutely. We want to make sure that, again, people are really immersed into the destination. So absolutely.
And we did it. We did it. We made it.
We made it through. And that's just one itinerary, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's important for people to know that, yes, that's our signature itinerary. It's 9-night cruise plus the pre-cruise hotel. So 10-night total. And we do that about 75 to 80% of the season. And we just go back and forth between Chicago, Toronto, and reverse. But we do also have a round trip Chicago itinerary. That's 14 nights. And that actually spends about a week up in Lake Superior. And we hit places like Thunder Bay, Duluth. So we spend more time in Minnesota here as well. And then we also have that same itinerary you and I just walked through, but a longer version. So Chicago, but instead of now ending in Toronto, they can either go to Montreal or to Quebec. So if they want that French-Canadian flair, they can certainly do that too.
Now, this is an unfair question, but do you have a favorite lake for those scenic sailing days?
Ooh,
I
know. That's a good question. It's probably unfair, even more so unfair, because I haven't done a lot in Lake Superior, where a lot of people say that is hands down, Thunder Bay, Lake Superior is the most incredible out of all of them. But I haven't done that one yet because it is the longer journey. It's 14 nights. I think the important thing to know is that, when people are looking for something different and you're not sure what to visit next, a lot of people don't think about what's in our own backyard. And when people think, I want to do a U.S. river cruise, they don't even realize that you can do a Great Lakes cruise. And so that is a great alternative to doing something on U.S. rivers, which I've done many, many times, and they're great. But they have some really small, quaint towns to visit, whereas the Great Lakes are great. I mean, they are massive and huge, and they're really a very unique destination. I think when you're looking at a little bit more domestic travel, having the lakes as an option is such a more viable alternative than just a U.S. river. There's just so much more to see.
Thank you so much for joining us on our cruise to the Great Lakes with Victory Cruise Lines. And we hope it inspired you to think about destinations that you might have previously overlooked or hadn't considered when you were planning your next trip. There's a lot to see in the world, but there are a lot of hidden gems hiding in plain sight right in your own backyard. If you enjoyed this episode, we would love it if you shared it with your friends and family, and definitely subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts or our YouTube channel so that you can keep up with all of our travels and get excited to discover your next trip. Congratulations, you just earned another stamp in your podcast passport. Flip the page because we have another one coming your way. But until then, safe travels from all of us here at Travel Store.